It's good to see you. I was gone last week, and I was struggling on the beach in Florida, and it was tough. I spent a couple days with some friends on Amelia Island, Florida, north part of Florida. Then Martha and I spent a little bit of time at St. Augustine Beach just by ourselves, and then we spent a few days with my parents in Palm Coast. And I love the beach. I love being on the beach. I love walking along the shore. I cannot get enough of it. My last day there, my parents live about a 20-minute drive from the beach, but I got up at 5:15 a.m. and I drove to the beach because I had to be on the beach to see the sunrise and just walk on the beach. And so growing up in New Jersey, warm weather and the summer meant the beach. It meant day trips to the beach, it meant weekend trips, it meant family vacations, and the beach carried with it all kinds of thoughts for me, like playing in the ocean and body surfing and big barbecue dinners at my grandparents and riding on the boardwalk, walking on the boardwalk. Feeding the seagulls my lunch, right? Even though my parents told me don't do that because you get inundated with seagulls. But I remember all that. And then also I remember sandcastles, building sandcastles. And so if you, as a kid, if you vacationed at the beach or you've been on the beach, hopefully you have. If you never experienced the beach, it's amazing. But anyway, hopefully everybody in here has been to the beach. But when you get on the beach and you start building a sandcastle, we all have some of these images and aspects of sandcastle building, right? Whether it's digging a big moat around your sandcastle and running back and forth from the water and pouring water in it, or making walls, forming walls with your hands, or filling up buckets or these castle forms with sand and then dumping them over, right, to try and create this castle structure. But whatever it was for you, we all have some of these images and aspects of sandcastle building. But now as an adult, as a dad, as a granddad, as maybe for you, uncle, aunt, whatever, an adult, building sandcastles with kids, it's a different beast altogether. Especially if you're like me a little bit, and you have in your mind, like, there's a task at hand to build a sandcastle, right? And especially if, again, like me, I want to take our work serious building this sandcastle. And I have in my mind how this sandcastle is gonna turn out. And especially if you want it to last. Right? Because let's be honest, if your kids are young and they're little, like, it can be really frustrating, right? Because their attention span is just so short, and they don't appreciate. They don't appreciate, and they don't care about the intricacies of design, right? And symmetry and excellent craftsmanship and castle building. They don't care about any of that. You know what I mean? They are just so happy. They are so happy that you have got down on their level and that you're playing with them and that you're giving them all of your attention. They are out of their mind happy. But you, no, like that has escaped you. You have totally missed what's going on, your perspective. You're missing what's the little people that are in front of you. And you are like, you have a task at hand, and you got some work to do, and we're gonna get together and you start giving orders to the kids. Okay, you do this, hey, do this, don't do it that way, because you got a plan in your mind of how it's supposed to go. But then for them, so you're starting to build, but then you realize they're not following the blueprint. They're not following what you want to do in the sand. And then you just see they start destroying your castle. It's like they're kicking over towers, and they're having way more fun kicking over like what you are trying to build. And then after a while, it's like their attention span's gone. They're gone. They're doing something else. Because you're not fun anymore. So I'm going to go do something that's fun. I'm going to go do what I want to do. I'm going to build stuff how I want to build it. And so because that, you're done. Like, all right, they lost interest, and I have now lost interest. Why would I keep building something that you're just going to destroy and it's not even going to last 2 seconds? If my work doesn't matter, if it's not important, then I'm done. Like what's the point? If we perceive that our work doesn't matter, then why are we going to do our work? It's for many of you, that's where your work is right now. It's not enjoyable to you. It's not fulfilling. It's not fun. It's a job now. It's some work. It pays the bills and maybe a little bit more. You feel it's your responsibility to work. Maybe as a mom and dad, like these kids in front of you, they're my responsibility. And so maybe it's just that it's turned into that for us because our head is down at the task of building, or at least trying to build, our grand castles on the earth. And we are frustrated because they're not turning out the way we thought. Like, this isn't the blueprint that I had in my mind. It doesn't look the way that I thought it was gonna look. And then, not to mention, the people around us are messing it up. Like, they're messing up what I'm trying to do, what I'm trying to accomplish. All the while we are oblivious to a lot of things that are happening around us. And sometimes if we stop long enough to think about it, right, we begin to ask our questions like, what's the point? Is this all there is? Like, I went off to school and I got a degree, or maybe I didn't. And then after that, I got into this job and I started working. Now I'm working for the rest of my life, and then I want to die. Like, is this all there is to life? And does it really matter? As Legend asked last week, sometimes we get to the point where we're asking ourselves the question, does what I do really matter? And add to that, as a follower of Jesus, then we start to begin asking ourselves the bigger question, like, in light of eternity, in light of eternity, does the work that I do really matter? Does it carry any significance? Because in the end, like, I've read some stuff in the Bible where it says, in the end, it's all gonna burn up anyway. Translated, this earthly castle and everything that I have in it is going to be demolished, and God's going to take us all the way to heaven. And so does what I do, what we do on Monday, really matter? And if it doesn't, then what's the point? And so we are in our last week in our series, God at Work, where we have been talking for the past 5 weeks about the theology of work. What is it that God thinks about work? And why do I struggle so much sometimes? Why am I so stressed out? Why am I so disappointed and unfulfilled at different times in my life about my work? And what attitude should I have? And how should I approach the work that I have in front of me as a follower of Jesus? And I have found myself over the past couple weeks asking the question concerning this series: what is the end game of our work? Why is it that I am doing what I am doing? So some of you think, well, Paul, that's easy for you. Like, that your job is telling people about Jesus. Like, that's an awesome job. Like, you should, that's an easy answer for you. And so let me just tell you something. Every day is not fun for me, okay? Every day is not a joy for me. there are days where I struggle and I'm like, what am I doing? Why am I doing what I'm doing? Shocker, maybe for some of you. But I'm going to put the question back at you. Why do you do what you do? And we've covered some of these answers. Money, right? Some of you do it. I do it for money. Some of you do it. I love it because I do what I do because I love it. And some of you are like, I enjoy it. I do what I do. I enjoy it. And I'm good. I'm good at what I do. Some of you say, I don't know why I do what I do. Like I'm clueless. Like I went, I got a degree, I got a job, and I got swept up into it. Now I've been doing it my whole life. I don't even know why I'm doing it, but I'm doing it. Whatever the reason is. But if I change the question and asked it a little bit differently, and I said, what is the end game for you and your work? What's the end game? What would you say? Because we all want to do what matters in life. Nobody wants to spend their time doing something that's a waste. That would be so defeating and unfulfilling. Right? So how would you answer the question? What is the end game for you and your work? That's a little harder question to answer. Some of you might say, well, Paul, it's pretty easy. Like, make money, pay your bills, take care of your family, maybe even a little bit more, start saving some money, hopefully put some money away so that one day you can retire and then you can enjoy the fruits of your labor. Like that, Paul, that's just the American accepted way of living. Some of you say, well, the end game for me, like I don't think much about retirement. I don't even know if I'm going to retire. I don't even know if Social Security money is going to be there. So I want to make enough money now, like right now, so I can have fun doing what I love to do, whether it's traveling, all the hobbies and buying things so I can go and do things. So I want to enjoy life now. I want to get to the point that I can do whatever I want to do whenever I want to do it. Now, some of you, maybe you're like, well, you think a little bit longer about it, and you're like, like the end game, like I want to do something with my life, something that produces something, like some good services for others, or like I want to make a difference. Like I want my life to be significant in some way. Like I want to contribute, whether in a small way or in a big way. Like I want to contribute something to the world. There are different end games that we have, but here's the point. Whatever your answer, there is an objective, there's a motivation, there is a reason we do what we do. There is a reason that we get out of bed in the morning, tomorrow morning when you go to work. And some of you are like, well, Paul, that's easy. I just don't want to get fired. Like I want to have a job, so that's why I'm getting out of bed, so I can show up, so I don't lose my job. But whatever your answer, it shapes the way we do what we do. Whatever your answer is about work, it shapes the way we do what we do, because our view of work determines how we work. Our view of work determines how we work. So my hope today, as we conclude this series, is that for you and I to both see and consider the end game of our work from God's point of view, from his perspective. Because when you see our work that way, right, it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference in our life, because we see that what we do with our work will matter for all of eternity. What you do tomorrow will matter for all of eternity, good or bad. In fact, that's why God created us. That's why he created us and our work to last. As we saw in week 1, when God created man and woman, he gave them a gift. He gave them something to do. He gave them a purpose. He gave them and us work. That's what he gave us. And he didn't just leave us out there trying to figure out what it is we're supposed to do. He gave us a job description to subcreate using all the raw materials on the planet to join God in moving the world forward as his subcreators, using our intellect and abilities and interpersonal skills to represent him, right? And to multiply and establish this culture that would represent the Creator. That's why we were put on the planet. He gave them the keys to the planet and the freedom to move it forward. And we cannot, for the life of us, get inside of our head and our heart how fun and how freeing that would be. Because as you read the story, you know what happens. They chose a different path. They chose to do opposite of what God's design was. And so sin entered the world. And with sin, the curse on us, on the planet, on our work. So work wasn't a curse. Work is cursed because of sin. And from that moment on, man has been caught in this current, not only of a culture that's moving away from God, but a culture of work that is moving away from God. And that's why tomorrow morning, next day, the next day, that's why work's hard sometimes. That's why you get stressed out sometimes. That's why at times it's unfulfilling. Because our work environments, they're full of sin. And they're filled with people that are full of sin. And that includes who? You and me. Okay, that includes us. Right? We are in that. But as we stated in week 2 and 3 of this series, it wasn't as if when sin entered into the world, God threw up his hands and said, okay, I'm done with it. No. At that point, he began this rescue plan. Enter Jesus. And through his perfect life on the cross, his death, burial, and resurrection, right, he redeemed us. And with his resurrection, he ushered in a new way of life, including a new way in which we work. Jesus' work was and is a game changer for how we now, as his followers, do our work. The culture hasn't changed. We've changed. We have changed in Jesus, and we are now reconnected with God's original intent for work. We have a new master, a new outlook, and we have a new assignment. We are salt and light. We are ambassadors. We are representatives on the planet where our primary calling, regardless of what we do, is to carry the good news of Jesus. His death, burial, we get to carry that, not just with our mouth, but by the way we work every day. Remember a couple weeks ago, I told you that you can summarize the Bible in 4 words: creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. And now we are in this space between now and not yet, where we have been redeemed. We are no longer under the bondage of sin. We're not a slave to sin. We are free from that. We've been redeemed. We've been given, reconnected, right? Recaptured this reason we work. But we have not yet experienced the restoration. Restoration is when Jesus comes and establishes a new heaven and a new earth. And since we're not there, we sometimes have a hard time connecting our work right now with eternity. Because right now, we often act as victims of the fall, victims of the culture we live in, instead of, right, children of the King, redeemed with a new assignment, a new master, a new assignment. We don't act like that. And then primarily we don't act like that because of two reasons. One is we fail to see the intrinsic value and importance of our work and how good and even wants to use us and our work in the lives of people and moving the planet forward. So on one hand, we just don't understand the intrinsic value of our work. But then on the other hand, we have this weird view of eternity. And somehow along the line, somewhere, we have adopted this thinking that heaven is, we've heard it's real, but in our thinking, it's like, it's up there somewhere. Like we're gonna, be some spirit building beings in this celestial place, and we're gonna float on clouds, play hard, whatever. It's almost like a fantasy. We don't see it as real, but nothing could be further from the truth about eternity. And the Bible tells us about that. And I just want to read a couple passages today. First one's out of Revelation chapter 21. And if you have time this week, I would invite you just to hang out in the end of Revelation 21, 22. Just kind of meditate there and remind yourself of the hope that we have if you're a follower of Jesus. So I just want to read just a few verses out of first 4 verses of chapter 21. And it says this: "Then I saw a new heaven and a new earth." This is a vision that John was given of what heaven looks like. "For the first heaven and the first earth had passed away, and the sea was no more. And I saw the holy city, New Jerusalem, coming down out of heaven from God, prepared as a bride adorned for her husband. And I heard a loud voice from the throne saying, 'Behold, the dwelling place of God is with man. He will dwell with them, and they will be his people, and God himself will be with them as their God.'" Man, we can't even get our heads around that. "But he will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain anymore, for the former things have passed away." God creates all things new. And heaven is a real physical place. And instead of it being this garden, now it is a city. It is a city, a garden city with architecture and music and beauty and culture, where God he's setting the tone in this new city. I think it's amazing. I want you to turn to Isaiah chapter 65 and how close Isaiah's passage, written hundreds of years earlier. And Isaiah says it this way in verse 17 of chapter 65, "For behold, I create new heavens and a new earth, and the former things shall not be remembered or come into mind." How awesome is that? "But be glad and rejoice forever in that which I create. For behold, I create Jerusalem to be a joy, and her people to be a gladness. I will rejoice in Jerusalem and be glad in my people. No more shall be heard in it the sound of weeping and the cry of distress." Go down to verse 21. "They shall," watch this, because some of you have never read this before. "They shall build houses and inhabit them." In heaven, in the new city. "They shall plant vineyards and eat their fruit. They shall not build and another inhabit. They shall not plant and another eat. For like the days of a tree shall the days of my people be." And watch, "And my chosen shall long enjoy the work of their hands." Isaiah paints this picture in heaven. We will work forever. Some of you right now, I just ruined your whole day. I ruined your whole image of heaven. You're like, "Man, I thought I was gonna rest in heaven." Yeah, you are. But you're gonna rest from the toil of your work. We have no idea. Like, right now, all of our work is tainted with sin. So when we get to heaven, we are gonna experience work as God intended for us. We're gonna work with joy. We're gonna serve him, and we are gonna rule and reign with him. Our work no longer is gonna be this burden or something we dread, but rather it's going to be life-giving. Randy Alcorn in his book Heaven writes this: our best work days on earth, when everything turns out better than we planned, when everything's done on time, when everyone on the team pulls together and enjoys each other, those days, they are just a foretaste of the joy of our work will bring us in heaven. So why is that important? Well, why is it important that we know that we will work forever in heaven and that will be a joy? Because here, it shows us that what God has placed before us to do now on earth, it matters. It matters in preparing us for heaven. Philosopher Dallas Willard and others have stated that in the present, we are training for reigning with Jesus. So each and every day when we walk this planet and we walk in faith and we walk out our obedience to Jesus, where we work, how we work, with who we work, what is happening is we are being formed into the kinds of people that rule and reign, or that will rule and reign with Jesus. Often in Jesus' teaching when he was on the planet, he would point towards the kingdom of heaven, that there is way more to life than what you see, and that we will be rewarded for what we do in heaven. And there's this one parable in Matthew chapter 25. It was called the parable of the talents. And in this parable, Jesus is teaching, and he's saying, hey, the master gave his servants, 3 of his servants, these talents and to do something with. And he went away, and then he came back, and he wanted to see how they invested what God had, or what the master had given them. And so 2 of them had invested and got a return. The other one didn't, and he wasn't very pleased with them. And the parable, the story of the parable is the story of us. And where Jesus, upon his resurrection, right, he leaves us, his disciples, with talents. And talents aren't just money. Talents are our resources, our gifts, our abilities, our competencies. And when Jesus returns, we're going to give an account for how we used what he gave us. And the point Jesus is making, not only are we going to give an account, and he expects us to do something with what we have, what we do is going to be built upon when we get to heaven. What we do now will matter later. Say that with me. What we do now will matter later. Go ahead and say it. What we do now will matter later. And so one of the ways that it has been explained even is that this time on this planet is an internship for what will happen in the future. Russell Moore said it this way: our jobs, whether preaching the gospel or loading docks or picking avocados or writing legislation or herding goats, aren't accidental. Our lives now are shaping us and preparing us for a future rule, and that includes the honing of a conscience and a sense of wisdom and prudence and justice. The end game for our work is way more than money and building our earthly castles and retirement and the accolades of people. Now, this does not only matter for heaven, right? For the fact that what we do now matters later, and it'll be built upon what we do now and how we carry ourselves. We are giving the world around us a glimpse of what heaven will be like. We are showing them, as followers of Jesus, we are showing them the goods of the kingdom of heaven on this planet. The culture that we are demonstrating to them is in contrast, stark contrast to the culture that's all around us. The church, and I'm not saying this building, the church, you and me, we are the church. We become this outpost of the kingdom of God wherever we are, wherever we work. N.T. Wright says it this way: what you do in the present by painting, preaching, singing, sowing, praying, teaching, building, digging wells, campaigning for justice, writing poems, caring for the needy, loving your neighbor as yourself, will last into God's future. These activities are not simply ways of making the present life a little less beastly, a little more bearable until the day we leave it behind altogether, as the hymn so mistakenly puts it. They are part of what we may call building for God's kingdom. What we do now will matter for eternity. So if that's true, and it is, that should make a difference. That should make a difference in how we walk out of this building tomorrow and how we walk into our workplace or even working from home. Because here's what I know. While I love being in this building, I love worshiping with you, I love gathering here every Sunday morning with you, what we're doing in here will not impact our culture or our city. I hope I inspire you and the other communicators inspire you a little bit, encourage you, maybe make you think a little bit. But that's not going to change our culture. That's not going to impact our city, because 99.something% of the people that are in the triangle will never come into this building. Where the church will impact our culture is where we spend most of our breathing moments. Where we work. Where we work. Wherever we work tomorrow, we get to pick up the cultural mandate that God gave us in the beginning that has been recaptured by the work of Jesus. We are new. We have a new master. We have a new outlook. We have a new assignment. And we get to take up our position, joining God, partnering with him, and representing him as sub-creators. Beyond doing good work, and we've talked a lot about doing good work over the last 4 or 5 weeks, we carry with us the goods of a culture that Jesus himself modeled when he was on the planet. To love God deeply, to love others, and do the will of the Father. He ushered that in. He ushered that way of life in for us through his death, burial, and resurrection, and then empowered us with the Holy Spirit. Our work takes on a whole new meaning when we understand that what we do now matters later. Because watch, as a result of what Jesus did for us, he puts us in places. It's all coming right here. This whole series is coming right here. He puts all of us in places. We are his workmanship, prepared for good works in businesses and families and schools and in front of clients and on sales calls and in board meetings where we are, watch, we are given the invitation. We are given the blessing. We are given the freedom to join us in what he is doing all around us. He wants to redeem the whole world around us. If we would just open our eyes. He's at work. The people that you and I work around every single day, they are not just mere mortals. You understand what I'm saying? You and I will live for eternity. Eternity.
The people that you work around will live for eternity. They will either live in heaven with God because they have trusted Jesus as their Lord and Savior, or they will live separated from him in a real place called hell. We all will live for eternity. That's why we need to see work from God's point of view. Because without seeing our work as God sees it, we'll miss it. We miss the men and the women that are all around us. We miss the invitations that are all around us. We miss where God is already at work because our eyes are down and we are grinding through it. God wants to use us where we work. And as I was just thinking through this talk, and I have struggled, I'll just be honest, I've struggled through this talk. Last night and even this morning, God gave me something that I think is just really important. Like kind of the end of this whole series. You know, we started this year with Sabbath. Like taking a day, work 6, rest 1. It's a pause. Because here's the deal. This is so true for me and for you. Without the pause, you miss the primary calling. You just do. You get into the grind. You just get after it. And you miss God is at work redeeming the world. And he has invited you and he's invited me into it. And our work should not be the grind. It should be an adventure that he calls us to. Not asking you to change the world, just asking you to change your world. Where you are. So, beyond the Sabbath, I would just encourage you, the takeaway for today and this whole series. Like, yeah, do Sabbath, work 6, rest 1, but I would say pause every day. Like pause in the morning. We sang about it in that song. I see you in the morning, praise you in the morning, and I know that you love me. And that he loves everybody around you. And so pause, because without the pause, it's going to be tough for you to see how your work now matters for eternity.